I never thought betrayal would come from the two people I trusted most. But life has a twisted sense of humor, doesn't it? One moment I was planning a wedding. The next, I was standing in my own bedroom, watching my fiancée and my brother shatter everything I believed in. People say you can sense when something's wrong, but the truth is, sometimes you don't see it until it's too late, until the damage is done. And the worst part? My family took his side, as if I was the problem, as if I was the one who needed to get over it. But tell me, how do you move on when the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who destroy you? I grew up knowing my place, second, always second. Lester, my older brother, was the golden boy, the one who could charm his way out of anything. Mom and Dad adored him, laughed at his stories, overlooked his mistakes. Me? I buried myself in books, in numbers, in logic. Because logic made sense. It didn't play favorites. But no matter how many achievements I stacked up, no matter how many times I made them proud, it was never quite enough. And maybe, just maybe, that's where it all started. The feeling that I had to earn love, that I had to prove myself worthy. Funny thing is, I didn't hate Lester. I envied him, sure, but I admired him too. He had this effortless confidence, this ability to make people feel special, even when he didn't mean it. I watched him navigate life with a kind of recklessness I could never afford. He got into trouble and was forgiven. He failed, and they helped him back up. Meanwhile, I played it safe, followed the rules. Stability was my armor. And yet, deep down, I wondered, was I missing out? Was there something Lester understood about life that I didn't? Looking back, I should have seen the pattern. I should have recognized the way history had a habit of repeating itself. But when you spend your life trying to be good enough, you don't always notice the cracks forming beneath your feet. You convince yourself they don't exist. That was my first mistake, thinking that, for once, I wouldn't end up in Lester's shadow. That, for once, something in my life would be just mine. But fate has a cruel sense of humor, doesn't it? I met Carla at a party I almost didn't attend. Crowds weren't my thing, but a friend dragged me along, promising it'd be good for me. And then, there she was, loud, fearless, magnetic. She had this way of making the whole room orbit around her, and somehow, that energy pulled me in. We talked for hours, bonding over true crime podcasts, weird food combinations, and our shared love for late-night drives with no destination. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not as Lester's brother, not as the reliable guy who always played it safe, but as me. Carla wasn't like anyone I had ever dated. She was unpredictable, wild, the kind of person who could turn a regular Tuesday into an adventure. I think that's what hooked me. She made me feel alive, like I was finally breaking free from the careful, calculated life I had built. It wasn't just attraction, it was a craving, a need to hold on to something exciting, something that felt different from everything I had known. I told myself this was it. This was my moment to have something, someone who was truly mine. But looking back, I wonder, was it ever really mine to begin with? At first, everything felt effortless. We'd stay up talking until sunrise, try every new restaurant in town, and binge-watch documentaries while making up absurd theories just to make each other laugh. It was easy, natural, like we had been waiting to find each other all along. I let my guard down, let myself believe that this time I had won. But the thing about falling too fast, you don't see the ground coming. And when you do, it's already too late. It started small, so small I almost missed it. A casual question about who I was texting, a playful grab for my phone when a notification popped up. Just curious, she'd say, flashing that effortless smile. At first I brushed it off. Who wouldn't be a little protective in love? But curiosity turned into suspicion, and suspicion turned into something else. Late at night, I'd wake up to find her scrolling through my messages, eyes scanning for something, anything, to confirm a fear that didn't exist. And no matter what I said, no matter how much I reassured her, it was never enough. Then came the accusations, random, baseless, but always delivered with conviction. A co-worker's name mentioned in passing turned into a full interrogation. A delayed text reply became proof that I was hiding something. And the worst part? She made me question myself, made me wonder if I was somehow the problem, if maybe I wasn't giving enough, if maybe, just maybe, this was normal. After all, she loved me. That's what she always said. And love, real love, was supposed to be intense, wasn't it? The day she followed me to work was the day I knew something was wrong. I caught her across the street, half hidden behind a parked car, watching. She didn't even look embarrassed when I confronted her. "I just had a feeling," she said, as if that explained everything. And maybe, in her mind, it did. But standing there, staring at the woman I thought I knew, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet warning, a whisper in the back of my mind telling me to run. I ignored it. And that was my second mistake. Despite the warning signs, despite the knots in my stomach that never fully went away, I convinced myself that love was supposed to be messy, passionate, consuming. So when I got down on one knee in that candlelit restaurant, watching Carla's eyes widen in surprise, I told myself this was the right choice. And when she said yes, no, when she screamed yes, drawing the attention of everyone around us, I let myself believe that all the doubts, all the red flags, didn't matter. Love was a choice, wasn't it? And I was choosing her. At first, the wedding planning felt like a dream, our dream. But quickly, it became clear it was hers. Every decision, every detail had to be extravagant, bigger than anything I had imagined. A designer dress, a venue with a waiting list years long, imported flowers that cost more than my first car. "We deserve the best," she'd say, her excitement contagious. And I wanted to believe her. I wanted to give her everything, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pulled into something bigger than us, something I couldn't control. The more I tried to set limits, the more the fight started. My practical side, the one that had always kept me grounded, clashed against her relentless pursuit of perfection. And yet, every time I thought about calling it off, I told myself I was overreacting, that this was normal, stressful, sure, but normal, because that's what people do when they love each other, right? They fight, they compromise, they move forward. I told myself that once we were married, things would settle, that she'd trust me more, need to control less. But love isn't magic, and marriage isn't a cure. And soon enough, I'd learn that the hard way. Lester came back like he always did, loud, confident, and somehow still the center of attention. After his messy divorce, our parents welcomed him home with open arms, like a prodigal son returning from war. No judgment, no questions, just unconditional love. I should have been used to it by now, but it still stung. I introduced him to Carla, expecting polite small talk, maybe some forced enthusiasm. Instead, I watched something shift in the air. The way her eyes lingered on him a second too long, the way he turned on that effortless charm of his. It was subtle, too subtle. At first I told myself I was imagining things. Carla was just being friendly, Lester was just being Lester. But the way she laughed at his jokes, ones I'd heard 100 times before, felt different. The way he leaned in when they talked, his arm grazing hers, felt calculated. It was nothing, I told myself. I was just being paranoid. And yet, every time I caught them in conversation, there was this unspoken energy between them, something I couldn't quite name. I tried to shake it off, to trust that I was overthinking. But deep down, an old familiar fear started to creep in. Then came the comparisons, subtle at first, then sharper. "Your brother is so funny. Lester's always been such a free spirit. He just gets people, you know?" I nodded, forced a smile, played the role of the understanding fiancé. But inside, something twisted. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them, the way she looked at him. And for the first time, I felt it. The same feeling I had growing up, watching Lester take what he wanted, knowing no one would stop him. And suddenly, I wasn't so sure that this time would be any different. I wasn't supposed to be home early that night. Maybe that's why they got careless. The office let us out ahead of schedule, and I remember feeling excited to surprise Carla, to steal a quiet moment together in the middle of all the chaos. But as I stepped inside, something felt off. The lights were dim, the air too still, and then I heard it, a muffled laugh, a voice I knew too well. My heartbeat pounded in my ears as I walked toward the bedroom, each step heavier than the last. And when I pushed the door open, the world as I knew it ended. They froze. Carla, wrapped in nothing but a sheet, her face twisting from shock to something else, annoyance maybe? And Lester, sitting on the edge of my bed, shirtless, his expression unreadable. For a moment, no one spoke. No frantic explanations, no desperate apologies, just silence. And then Carla broke it. "Charlie, we need to talk." Talk? That's what she thought this was. As if this wasn't betrayal, as if I hadn't just walked into the worst possible version of my life. Lester sighed, rubbing his face like this was some minor inconvenience. "Look, man, it's not what it looks like." But it was. It was exactly what it looked like. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something, to demand answers that I already knew wouldn't satisfy me. But all I could do was stare at them, at the two people who were supposed to love me, supposed to be mine. Carla tried to twist it, saying I had been distant, that I was too focused on work, that she felt alone. And Lester, he just sat there, like none of this mattered. Like this wasn't the worst thing he had ever done to me. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I threw them out, both of them. Carla pleaded. Lester barely put up a fight. He just grabbed his things, as if he already knew this was coming, as if this was just another chapter in a long story where he always got away with everything. But the real gut punch came later. The phone rang, and before I even answered, I knew who it was. Mom. Her voice was soft, almost rehearsed. "Charlie, sweetheart, don't do anything drastic." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I can't believe he did this to you." Just a gentle reminder that Lester was still family. Dad chimed in next, his words cutting like glass. "You're overreacting, son. It's not the end of the world." Not the end of the world. My fiancée and my brother betrayed me, and they expected me to just move on. "Lester made a mistake," Mom added, her voice filled with that same infuriating patience. A mistake. Like he had spilled a drink or forgotten a birthday. And Carla? They barely mentioned her, as if she was just a footnote in the real tragedy here. The possibility that I might actually walk away from my brother for good. That night, I sat alone in an apartment that suddenly felt foreign. The walls echoed with ghosts of laughter that no longer belonged to me. My phone buzzed with messages from people choosing sides, not mine. I should have expected it. Lester had always been the favorite. And me? I was the one who was supposed to forgive, to understand, to swallow my pride, for the sake of family. But as I stared at the empty space where Carla's things used to be, I knew one thing for sure. This time, I wasn't going to be the one left in the shadows. Not anymore. Carla reached out first, a text, then a call, then another. I ignored them all until one night, curiosity won. I answered expecting apologies, excuses, maybe even some twisted attempt at reconciliation. Instead, she told me something worse. "Charlie, it wasn't just a mistake." Her voice was quiet, hesitant. "It's been going on for months." Months. The word hit me like a fist to the stomach. The late nights, the inside jokes, the way she started dressing just a little differently. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. I went looking for proof. Not because I needed it, deep down I already knew, but because I wanted to see it with my own eyes. And I did. Hidden in old messages, in hushed conversations I had never paid attention to before. Carla wasn't Lester's first betrayal. She was just the latest. My ex-girlfriend from college? Him. That girl I had a crush on in high school? Him. Every time he had done the same thing, gotten close, gained trust, then taken what he wanted. And the worst part? I never even saw it happening, not once. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. "It's not personal," Lester said, as if that made it better, as if this wasn't a game he had been playing my entire life. "You make it too easy." Those were his exact words. You make it too easy. Something in me cracked. It wasn't just Carla. It wasn't just this one betrayal. It was a pattern, a sick, deliberate cycle. And the only way to break it? Walk away. Not just from him, from all of it. I packed my bags without telling anyone. No long goodbyes, no dramatic speeches, just silence. I was done explaining myself to people who had already chosen their sides. My apartment, once filled with Carla's presence, felt hollow. My phone buzzed with messages I didn't bother reading. Mom still believed I'd come around. Dad thought I was being irrational. And Lester? He didn't reach out at all. Maybe, in his mind, he had already won. But for the first time, I didn't care about winning or losing. I just wanted out. I took a leave from work, sold what I could, and booked a one-way ticket out of that city, out of the life that had kept me trapped, in a loop I never saw coming. It wasn't running away. It was survival. I needed space to breathe, to unlearn the version of myself that had spent years fighting for scraps of affection from people who never truly valued me. The farther I got, the lighter I felt. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself, and that realization, it was both terrifying and liberating. But even as I left it all behind, there was one person I couldn't ignore. Lisa, my sister. She called me the night before I left, her voice laced with something I hadn't heard before, understanding. "I get it," she said, no judgment, no pleading, just quiet solidarity. She had been overlooked too, pushed aside in favor of Lester's golden glow. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I thought. Maybe this wasn't an ending after all. Maybe, for the first time, it was the beginning of something real. Starting over felt strange at first. A new city, a new apartment, places where no one knew my name, where I wasn't Lester's brother or the guy who got cheated on. Just Charlie. It was both unsettling and freeing. I kept to myself at first, adjusting to the quiet, letting the weight of the past settle before I could finally start shaking it off. Therapy helped. So did long walks, journaling, and small moments of peace I had never let myself have before. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing approval. I was just being. Lisa checked in often, her presence a reminder that I wasn't completely untethered from my past. She had her own wounds, her own battles, and somehow we found comfort in that shared experience. "You don't owe them anything," she told me one night, and I think that was the moment it finally clicked. I had spent years trying to earn a love that should have been given freely, from my parents, from Carla, from Lester. But love, real love, didn't come with conditions. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to start looking for it in the right places. Months passed, and little by little, I rebuilt myself, made new friends, found new passions, laughed without hesitation. The ghost of my past still lingered, but it no longer controlled me. One day, out of curiosity, I searched for Lester's name. He was still the same, charming, reckless, living, without consequence. And for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no resentment, just a quiet acceptance that I had finally broken the cycle. My story wasn't about him anymore. It never should have been. And as I stood there staring at the life I had built for myself, I realized I had finally won.
Keep watching our stories by clicking on one of the videos that appear on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be alerted about new videos. See you next time.